Hey guys, Double Wide 6, and today I'm taking a look at this Craftsman tractor. There's been several electrical issues with this tractor. From what I understand, the guy that owns it put a new starter on it, he put a new solenoid on it, the battery's not charging. He was asking me whether or not it's worth repairing. You know, he said the tractor has been working well, so he decided to get it repaired, so we're going to go ahead and repair it. But before we start working on it, I want to clean it off. It's pretty dirty, grimy, so start out by blowing it off and then we'll degrease it. So this is just degreaser here. Must be leaking oil somewhere. Well, that engine was pretty dirty, and it looks a lot better now. I'm just gonna get some of the water off. I told them I'd give them a tune-up too, so that's part of the reason I'm cleaning it. Alright guys, I got it cleaned off here, and what we're going to do is pop the hood off and figure out what's up with this. So here's the symptoms of the tractor. Clicking but not starting. I also noticed that the engine is really loose. So I noticed that this engine is missing one of the mounting bolts. So what I want to do is I want to go through and put that in because there may be a ground issue. So I just want to, that's going to have to be fixed anyhow. And I want to, so this back left engine bolt, if we take a look right there on that mount, that's missing. And you always want to have those bolts in there because the engine vibrates and there's a lot of torque on it. It's going to end up breaking the ear off the casting, and it can cause ground problems, which I've seen ground problems cause lawnmowers not to start. So here's the underside. I put the brake on, and in here, I don't know if you guys can see that. It's kind of dark, but we got to put a bolt in there. I should have some of those. So I found a bolt that should fit. We're going to start by putting this in. And we want to make sure while we have this that all the other bolts are tight. That one was a little loose. Alright, so now we know the engine's nice and tight to the frame. Let's see if that does anything for our issue. Gotta put the parking brake on. Alright, we're still not cranking. So, we're going to do a little bit of electrical troubleshooting here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check this battery, which I checked the other day when it was brought here. 13.12. So the owner said he replaced the battery, so that looks good. Next thing I want to look at is I'm going to hook my test light onto the battery positive, and I want to go down to the starter and make sure it's grounded properly. So there's our positive, and we're going to come down to the starter, which the homeowner replaced. So we're definitely grounded. The engine is grounded, so we've ruled all that out by tightening that bolt. So the next thing we need to do is look at the key switch and the solenoid. You just got to pull this gas tank. That way I can show you what's going on in here a little better. Okay, so the next thing I want to do here is if I turn the switch, we hear this clicking, and I believe it's coming from the solenoid. It's pretty loud. So if I touch the solenoid and turn the key, I could tell that solenoid is firing, and obviously the key switch is working because it's getting the signal wires coming into the solenoid. So now the question is there voltage at the starter? Maybe the starter's no good because it's not even cranking. So I'm going to take my test light and I'm going to ground it. So that's on one of those mounting bolts, which means it's grounded. And I'm going to put it here. This is where I should be getting 12 volts. And we're not getting our 12 volts, which is kind of odd. So I'm wondering if this cable's bad. Maybe it has a break in it. Because, let me check on the back of the solenoid. Let's see if we're getting our 12 volts here. We're not. So what that looks like to me is our solenoid is firing, but for some reason it's like not making the connection. And that's why this isn't getting power. Now there is a fuse here. Let's bring you guys in. So there's a 30 amp fuse here, and can't tell if you guys are, there's the fuse. Alright, so we have a 30 amp fuse here. I'm just going to check the ends of it. So, alright, the fuse is good. So, looks like there's a problem with the solenoid. This wire should be good. Alright, so we definitely have continuity through there. So, yeah, it looks like the problem's the solenoid. I think I'm going to try and jump the solenoid and see if this will crank. So the homeowner of this tractor, he said that he replaced the solenoid, and then he replaced the starter. He put a new battery in, and he said that the battery's not charging. He was talking to me on the phone. He did all this stuff on his own, and then he couldn't get it working. So that's how it ended up here. But it's weird that he put in a new solenoid, unless it's not grounded properly, but these bolts all look tight. So what I'm going to do is turn this thing to run, and we're going to jump across the solenoid and see if that it cranks. Well, there you go. So we're cranking good. As I said, the starter's new, so we know that works. So apparently something's up with this solenoid. And that's a 4-post solenoid. I should have one of those here. Let me put that in. And then we got to look into the charging system on this thing. So I've loosened up the base off camera, and now I'm just trying to disconnect the wires. Looks like these are 7/16, which I need to find the socket. So I've loosened up the solenoid, and now what I'm going to do is remove the wires from it. There's a few washers on here. Go. It's kind of odd that this is clicking, but it's not making contact. So we're going to switch it out. See if that fixes this. Okay, we're going to hook up the new solenoid. So I'm going to start with the nuts and the bigger cables, and these solenoids always come with lock washers. They're important that you use because of the vibration. So that one's ready to be tightened, and that one's on there. Let me get the nut on and our lock washer. And I did check right away that these, weren't corroded and were tight. Sometimes they don't make them tight and your engine won't start. So that's tight. Should be a good connection. And then there's 2 ears sticking off. That's for our signal wire and our ground, where we know we were getting 12 volts because it was clicking, but for some reason it wasn't making contact internally. Alright, so we got that on there. I just want to see if this will crank. See if this solenoid will crank. There we go. So I don't want to start it because I have my garage door closed. I got to mount this, and then we got to look into the charging issue with this tractor. Okay, we're going to see if this will fire up, and then we're going to take a look into our charging system. battery's definitely charging. It was up at like 16 volts, so I want to make sure it's not overcharging. So I'm going to run it and see how high it goes up. It was climbing. So the battery's charging at 17.5 volts, which seems high to me, but the battery was fully charged. I mean, it's been sitting outside for a couple days. It was at about 13.4 or 13.6 to begin with. You can see it's at 14.5, so 15.5, 16.5, 17.5, about 3 volts on top of the battery. So what I need to see, I had it running about 6 minutes here because I'm going to change the oil and do a tune-up on this thing. But I want to see if we blew out any electrical components, because it does seem a little high to me. But it might be fine. It's definitely charging. Let's see if it wants to start. So there you go. It seems like it's fine. He's just going to have to try and cut with it. If we have an issue where it knocks out the solenoid or something again, then we're getting too much charging. At that point, I'm going to go in and change the stator. Alright, so we'll continue on with this thing. So I'm going to use my oil extractor. Might as well do it all while we got it here. And I'll see if I have the air filter. I don't know if you guys noticed, but this tractor was smoking a bit. It seems like it's running fine, but a little bit of smoke. It's an older engine. I believe it's a 97 Briggs on there. And these are pretty good engines. They're better than the newer Intex, but I'm using this Mobile Super 5000, and this is a synthetic blend oil, and I like using this with the older engines because it helps prevent against wear. There's additives in it to break down sludge, and it's generally for older engines trying to extend the life. So it's a little more money up front, but I think for these older tractors it's going to help them out, and it's what I've been using lately. I don't use the full synthetic mobile one. I do use it in transmissions if it calls for it, but the full synthetic is a little bit thinner than regular oil, and you might get some leaks that you didn't have when you switch an older engine over to that synthetic. You know, the advantage would be you'd have longer run time with it, or intervals between changes. But you know, I kind of like this blended stuff a little better than the synthetic for tractor engines, at least. Just a side note, new engines that are breaking in, they call for 10W30. So you don't want to use the synthetic to break in an engine. That's a big no-no. So this engine has a lot of hours on it. That's why I'm going with the synthetic blend. This measuring cup's pretty nice for adding oil. And then what I do is I just wrap it up in a plastic bag so I don't have to clean it. So I use it about every other day. Well, there's about a quart, a little over a quart. I'm not sure what this engine takes. I think it takes about 1.4 or 5 quarts or liters. We're pretty close. I'm gonna check it and we'll move on. This dipstick you got to screw all the way down to test, where some of the Kohlers and the Hondas you don't have to. So we got to add some more. So I'm going to put in about half a quart, and then we'll check that. Oil's good. Took just about 1.5 quarts. I'm going to change the plug and do the fuel filter, and I have to order an air filter for this unit. Okay, we're on to the fuel filter, and this engine, one of the things I'm seeing is it's a cheaper engine because it doesn't have an oil filter, which, you know, pay the extra money, get an engine with an oil filter, that really helps in your long run. And another thing I'm noticing is that this fuel filter is made for an engine that has a fuel pump. This doesn't have a fuel pump because the gas tank's up top and it's gravity fed. So I'm going to clamp off the fuel line with these clamp pliers, and we're going to get this incorrect filter off, even though it looks pretty new. I always change these with tune-ups. Oops, that one broke. Got these other fuel pliers, fuel line pliers, that work pretty well, so we'll try those. Sometimes these are tough to get under the fuel line, and that piece actually broke off in here. I'm going to need a needle nose or something to grab that. I don't know if I can get in here. I've never seen one of these ends actually break off. I'm going to cut that off. That'll take care of that. And then the type of fuel filter you should have is one of these screens. So I'll let the owner know that they had the wrong filter on. You know, if you're doing this work yourself, you want to do it right, or you might have problems. Fuel pump engines are nice, especially if you have hills on your property. This one has a fair amount of dirt. You know, it looked good, which, you know, is working fine. It's doing its job, but there's always sediment in there. The longer you leave that sediment in there, it'll force itself through, and next thing you know, you have carburetor problems. So that takes care of that. Now we're going to change the spark plug. And I have this nice 5/8 real long extension. It's made for spark plugs. Brand on this is Cal Van, made in the USA. Never heard of the brand. I got it in a toolbox I bought from a mechanic, so I think it's for cars, but it's real nice for spark plugs because that's what it's made for. It sticks out far with this lead, and then it has the hex on the outside, so you can use a box wrench. And I usually just use this ratchet. I'll put that on there like this, and then use this just to crack it. And then since these plugs, the threads are pretty long, you know, it's nice to use the power ratchet to get it out. And this doesn't look terrible, but you can see it's definitely running a little bit rich. And, you know, we saw it smoking. And part of the tune-up, I always do the plugs. And it looks like we're missing a bolt here. I'll try and find that bolt. That's a specialty bolt because it has a shoulder on it. I'll see if I have one of those. If not, I'll have to get it ordered. So here's the plug I'm putting in. And I get these from Pro Parts Direct. They ship them out pretty quick and they sell like 50 packs. So I like these. They come already gapped, which is nice. It saves me a step. So I put them in like that, and then I use this power ratchet, and I just go real slow, just till it seats. And then once it seats, I just snug it like that by hand as a regular ratchet. And that takes care of the plug. So let's see if we can find this bolt. So here's my stash. In here, all this stuff comes from lawnmowers, engines that have taken apart, things like that. So it's not super organized, but I have things basically by size, and this one is all standard. And in here are specialty bolts from lawnmowers. So things like the bolts from mufflers. A lot of times these break. You can see I have them in here, and looky here. This is that shouldered bolt that we're looking for. Luckily I have this, otherwise to order that it'd probably cost like $6, $7, $8 for the customer. So we'll give them a used bolt, and this should be an exact match. Alright, so part of the tune-up includes sharpening the blades. That spindle's good. This one's good. I checked the belts. The belts actually look pretty good. And the deck is really clean. So I think he told me that he cuts his mother's yard with this. So he drives over to her house. And apparently he does that when the weather's nice. This deck really looks good. It's clean. So that's about all the scraping I need. The scraper's nice. It kind of bends with the contours. Grass buster. I think I got this from Pro Parts Direct as well. So here we go. Pop that one off. And get these sharpened up for them. They're really dull. Unbelievably dull. Wow. I like to do my sharpening outside, and I've moved over to cordless grinder, and I found that this M18 HD 12.0, that battery's huge. This thing never quits on me, so I can sharpen probably like 15 blades with this thing, no problem. Not that I've ever done that many at once. So these blades aren't beat up, but the angle of attack, it's almost like a 90-degree angle. I mean, literally it's over 70 degrees, so we gotta cut this down a little. Make it easier on the machine to cut. This is my blade balancer. If you're going to sharpen the blades, you got to balance them. Otherwise, you're going to wear out your spindles. So you can see this is nice because this has a star pattern and it'll fit on there. It kind of has that cone, and that blade is balanced. And the other thing is, you always want to clean up this grass. That way it's going to help it balance. Even though that grass is usually balanced because it's spinning, you get the same amount of accumulation on each side. But that looks real good, and we'll get the other one all set. And if one end's heavy, it'll just drop down like that, and then that heavy end's the one you got to take some material off. And this thing's highly sensitive. That's why you see it moving a little bit there. But that one's good. Okay guys, we're going to put the blades on. The deck's all scraped. I washed the top of the deck and the engine. That's something I do with, that's included in my tune-up. Especially if the mower is dirty. If it looks real good, I won't do that. I'll knock off a little money. So here we go. Put our blade on. There's a flat washer. And then there's a lock washer. And then our bolt. And you got to be careful that you get this star pattern on there. Lock that thing on, and then we'll run that in. Now I use this fuel impact, so we'll run this in just to get it to hold. And this is really nice because I can set it to the torque. For this mower, I'll set it to 1. And that'll be about 100 foot-pounds, which is more than you actually need. This blade should really be set at about 60, but I just set it to number 1. It's fine. Now we'll do this one. And I always put the nicer looking blade on the side that has a discharge, and that's just so that the customer can see the blade's been sharpened and cleaned up and that. And, that's just how I do it. So that'll take care of that. I usually check the air pressure and grease up the zerks. And that's easier to do when the tractor's jacked up. I use a chain hoist, as you can see here. Alright, top off the tire pressure. So the tires, they seem a little low, and you always want to keep them pumped up because they can unseat from the rim. I like to fill them to about 12 psi, at the most like 15. A little high. Feels good. It's good. We're right at 15. Especially with this going away for winter. I want to make sure that tires are inflated. So I also, when I service things, I like to put a sticker on with my contact information, business and all that. That way, if there's any issues, they can contact me, I'll take care of it. And if they have other equipment, they know who to call. So, yeah, that pretty much wraps it up, guys. One other thing I wanted to cover in this video is I always get people asking me, including the guy that owns this, you know, is it worth it to fix this thing? It's a 1997 tractor, so it's 23 years old. Like, is it worth putting any money into? And the answer to this one, it all depends on how you've treated the tractor. This has been, number one, stored indoors. I think they did oil changes and maintained things, and you know, you can tell the guy did some things because he was trying to do the solenoid and the starter himself. So yeah, you know, I think it's a solid mower. All right, the tires aren't all dry rotted. The deck's not rotted out. If you look at this deck, it's actually thicker than the newer mowers that are coming out. You know, you can buy your Craftsman mower today. You're going to pay about $2,000 for a mower like this. And this guy, he's getting everything fixed, plus the parts, and he's getting it all serviced and that. And, you know, he's in this probably under $300, and he's ready to go. This mower should be good for, you know, a couple more years, 5 years, 10 years if he takes good care of it. And really, that's good value. So I don't see any major issues with this mower. So yeah, it's worth fixing. You know, I mean, for him, it's like, yeah, we just saved $1,700 by fixing this, and this will work just as well as a brand new mower will work. In fact, even better, because the newer mowers, their decks aren't as strong, they rot out, they have issues with the deck cutting level, things like that, because they've cheaped these things out. And also the transmission on this unit is a lot better than newer transmissions that they put on many tractors. Alright guys, so what do I cover in a tune-up? A lot of times when people come to the shop, you know, they might have something wrong with their tractor, and if I have the tractor here, I always ask them if they want a tune-up, and usually they do, so it's all taken care of. So what do? I change the air filter and the pre-filter, which on this one I didn't do it because I have to order that. I do the fuel filter, I do the spark plug, any things that they ask me to do, I go ahead and take care of. So, you know, if they have a fuel problem or something like that, I'll I'll blow out the tank and clean all that and take care of that. Fill up the tires, change the oil. I'll change the oil filter as well. Generally, I'll write the hours on the machine on the oil filter, but this particular unit doesn't have an oil filter. I take a look at the spindles. I always wobble those to make sure that they're good. And you know, a lot of times if they're complaining about something like deck noises or the deck's bogging down, this or that, I'll look at those things as well. I check the pulleys, listen for noise, and I clean the top of the deck. Usually I'll just blow that off with a leaf blower, and you know, I might take like a screwdriver if anything's compact in there. Sometimes I'll pressure wash it depending how bad it is. The bottom of the deck, I scrape that, I sharpen and balance the blades, I put air in the tire, and all this stuff adds up and takes time. And then when I get everything done, I make sure the mower cuts and performs as it should. You know, I've worked on things, got them done, and then the next day I find out that like the needle and seat are leaking and there's gas coming out of the carburetor. So it's always good to, you know, take them for a test drive, cut what you can. You know, I like to spend about 10 minutes and make sure everything's working right. And it's when I get really busy that, you know, sometimes you'll miss some stuff. So yeah, that's basically what I include, and I do, you know, pick up and delivery if needed. And you know, this tractor, you know, I added a few bolts that were missing. I like to do you know, little things that are neglected. You know, like if a customer comes in and let's say like this knob here is missing, if I have one of those in my spare parts, I'll just throw it on for them. I think, you know, you treat customers right, they'll be back for more business, and, you know, that's kind of the way I work here. So anyhow, guys, thanks for watching the video. I'll put the links to some of the tools I use. You can check that out, or you can click on my Patreon if you think this video helped you out and you want to support the channel. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. And if you're not familiar with me, I have a ton of videos just like this one on my channel. So take care, guys.